Alrighty, folks. It is Sunday, August 11th, 10:02 p.m. here on the East Coast. Welcome to TwitchLine, your home for relationship advice here on Twitch. I am your host, Hodo, joined as always with my best friend and a fellow relationship guru, Mr. Acorn. How are you today?
Doing good, man. It's another lovely Sunday here. Got some exercise in, and now I'm relaxing, sipping on some lemon water, and ready to get into it.
Yeah, yeah. It was the second day of the English Premier League, as I am wearing my Chelsea jersey. Unfortunately, they got stomped 4-0, so I am sad today.
Yeah, that's not a good opener.
No, not at all. So terrible, a terrible way to open the league, but it is what it is. But as always, welcome to Twitchline, everyone. You can contact us here at twitchlinelove@gmail.com if you're interested in sending in questions, concerns, articles, things you want us to mention. Our email is always open to you. If you are interested in tweeting us via Twitter, you can tweet us at Twitchline. Drop us a follow here so that you can see when shows go live. Also, we're also streaming on YouTube right now. If you're watching on YouTube, hello. But that's where we archive all of our Twitchline VODs. So therefore, you can go there and see the archive of all of the shows that we've recorded here on YouTube and Twitch, and you can see some of the past episodes, some of our past Sunday Focus segments, as well as our shows on Wednesdays. And we even have a new Freeform Thursday, if those who are interested in watching us sort of talk about everything on Thursday. So it was a good long discussion of what was basically coming in our minds. So if you're interested in that, Freeform Thursday is also there for you to watch on YouTube. And if you want to take us on the go, we're also available on SoundCloud, where you can just take us on the go on your phone, on a tablet, or anywhere. SoundCloud can be streamed, and you can just listen to us as you are traveling along. But otherwise, welcome to the show. And Tim, it is Sunday, meaning that it is a segment. It is a Sunday focus time, and today we've got an interesting topic to talk about, don't we?
Indeed, we do. We are constantly dealing with this and seeing people dealing with it when we do our Reddit responses, and it is about setting standards in the people that you're picking, and also perhaps dating outside of them. So tonight we'll be looking at kind of like the elements of how people end up setting their standards, where they find issues and problems in that, and then, uh, you know, maybe along the way we'll throw out some advice and some personal stories, and you guys can pick all that apart and make your own decisions and hopefully make the right ones. Um, so most people never have a conscious conversation with themselves about about what their standards are, and they often create a mental list of what they consider to be red flags or deal breakers, and then they squish that together with another wish list of what they want from an ideal date or a partner. But in most cases, people spend more time looking outwardly at their dating selections rather than inwardly at themselves. So, part of this whole thing is going to be suggesting to everyone to have an honest conversation with yourself that will allow you to set healthy and reasonable dating standards and increase the likelihood that you'll pair up with somebody who's right for you. That's kind of where we're starting.
Yeah. Yeah. Setting standards is very, very important for those who are interested in going out into the dating world. You need to know what you want, or you end up with somebody that you don't want. And sometimes, sometimes, people don't know what they want. There are a lot of people out there, Tim, who don't know what they want out of a partner that they're trying to sort of date. Um, like any tips for anybody who has no idea what they should be looking for in a partner?
Yeah, there. I mean, well, there are a million, but if you are just wildly swinging and whatever you come in contact with is what you connect, whatever you connect with, and you're just dating people to date, you're going to get, you're going to go through a lot of hardship, I'll say, because without having standards for yourself, you are going to come across anyone that would have you. And uh, there are a lot of people out there that are not necessarily careful or caring. They're not considerate of you. I mean, again, just go on Reddit, go to the dating forums, and you will see people getting abused left and right. And a lot of that is not just because there are bad people out there and they came for you, but that you welcomed them into your life and you dated them. So we need to have a conversation about responsibility and the decisions that we make while we're talking about these standards as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing
Yeah.
about it is there's a lot of weird stuff out there when talking about dating standards. I mean, I think this is one of those topics that websites love to make lists from. And this is just a throwaway article that I wanted to just mention offhand before we really got started. This is from like Elite Daily, where they're trying to mention and sort of establish like a basic list of what you should be looking for in a partner. So it's like very interesting. It's sort of geared towards a person that has an experienced background with regards to dating, but even then, there are people who have no idea what they're looking for or what they should be looking for properly when they're even older. So you've got like things like a stable household, not to be jealous, lack of drive, blah blah blah. It's like the thing about it is like there are a whole bunch of things that you can look up to see what they people say you should be looking for, but a lot of it comes from experience. And today we're going to try to see if we can sort of sort all of that stuff out so that you can understand what it is that is sort of different between the two. So, uh, Tim, I think you have a whole bunch of differences and standards here that you can sort of break down when it comes to all of these things when you are looking through like a like a potential partner and how they should be broken down. So, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
All right. Yeah. Um, I guess to start off, we should talk about what we're talking about when we say standards. I mean, uh, I'm basically saying this is what I'm looking for, and I won't accept anything too far from this. So, from your website there, the person talking about the household that their partner came from,
Mm-hmm.
if family is very important to you and your concept of family is very important to you, your experience of family is very important to you, then your standard for family perhaps will be higher than another person's. And what you should look for is something that matches your standard and not too far from it. If you if you date and go into a long-term relationship and consider marrying someone and they are too far from your standard, you you may be welcoming a lifelong problem, a serious set of problems. And so that's why having these things kind of made clear early on when you're even picking in the beginning, it doesn't have to be the first thing you say when you meet someone. Hey, what's your family like? But it is something that you might keep in the background and you might be looking for signals on. So um, I think people initially need to understand that there's a difference between being picky and being discriminating, discerning.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so it's one thing to say, I am a discriminating person when it comes to the person I pick because I want someone of quality, in my opinion, right? Uh, but if you are overly picky about it and you're picking on things that are not even necessarily important for your happiness or for the strength of your relationship going forward, then you're going to get sort of caught up and you may find yourself having standards for something that doesn't necessarily help you to become that happy, healthy person in a relationship. Uh, this actually is, uh, it's an old one, but I think you'll remember it. We had a friend in college who, at one point, was telling us about this girl that he had been dating,
Oh no,
and he was
I
like,
know this.
"She's,"
I know where
you
this
already
is
know.
going. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he was dating this girl and he was like, man, she's great. She's so many good things. This, that. But I just don't know. I mean, she's got these thumbs, man. They're just a little bit weird. And it just, oh man, I don't know. And yeah, I mean, he ended up not things didn't work out between them. I don't know if it was because of that, but anytime that we referenced him in that relationship and relationships going forward, we're always like, oh man, shame about
Not
them
those
thumbs, man.
thumbs.
It's those thumbs. They always get in the way of love. But or another way, I have a friend who won't date people of a certain profession. and it's not a profession that's necessarily looked down on, but he has a concept of what kind of person takes this job and what kind of personalities go along with it, what their social status is, and all of that together to him just takes them off of the list. So
Interesting.
his standard doesn't include people who work in that field. I think that's up to him and that's his life, but it really doesn't allow for individuality, and he may be limiting himself.
Mm-hmm.
If someone wonderful came along and just happened to have that job, is he going to walk away from it? I don't know. So that's why I'm saying be discerning rather than just being picky. Uh, so if your list earlier kind of reminded me of a list that I came across while I was, doing a little research before we started this, and
I'll bring that
I
up
went to
here.
this website,
Oh,
Madame Noir. This website is specifically tailored to or directed towards African American women, but I think we all got a little bit of African American women in us, and there's probably some value to the lady who wrote this and what she decided were her points, and some of them we might think that they're picky, some of them might be discerning, and some of them are just basically trying to avoid uh, creepers basically. So
mm-hmm.
I mean there are 50 here, so clearly I'm not going to go over all of them, but I just think it's interesting. For example, she says, this person wants to know how your day is, right? And I don't think that she's saying this person needs to ask me how my day is every single day, or they don't love me, or they don't care about me, but rather that someone cares about you to know how you're doing in a kind of regular routine fashion where you are where it's not like you're struggling to find out that they care about how you're doing, that it's just there,
Mm-hmm.
right? Someone who respects your boundaries, someone who doesn't snoop for your phone. So that's not necessarily just about the phone, but that they respect your privacy, that they have a trusting relationship, that they're not worried about you cheating, that that there's other things underneath. So you kind of have to look between the lines here. And the standards, those standards between the lines are much more important than what shows up here. There are some interesting ones, like who doesn't have a savior complex, which I thought was kind of interesting. I guess some men decide that a woman needs to be saved from the world, from herself, from what?
Yeah,
Uh,
that's based on an old standard, if I remember right. Like, the man is the breadwinner and the woman takes care of the home, so therefore he's almost like the person that sort of is uh he's the quote man of the house. He is the be all end all. So sort of like that. I mean, and then some. But the savior complex goes both ways, though. When you're talking about a savior complex, you're talking about somebody who can rescue you from the situation that you're in. At least that's how I interpreted it. At least, but a woman can also be like that too, in the sense that uh, there are women who like to, let's say, take the bad boy and turn him into something that she wants, and basically saving him from his bad habits and things like that. And then there are men who also do the same thing to women. So I think that can go both ways. I don't know about you, but that's my opinion, honestly.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And a number of these uh, really have nothing to do with anything that we'd ever consider, like uh, doesn't question or deny your blackness. Like that itself is not anything I would consider for me personally. But again, between the lines here, is the person with you denying you of something that you feel is inherent to yourself that should never be denied,
Hmm.
right? So you know anyways, there are layers to this thing, and you should be looking for people who are respectful of all of you you know
Yeah, and we've
uh
listed a whole bunch of them here.
sure.
I took like 1 through 9 and 38 through 47. There's some
Yeah.
a little interesting ones that we didn't put up that can be a little intimate. Let's just say I think
Yeah.
um, where was it? I think it was uh, number 14. Probably not appropriate for
Yes.
Twitch or YouTube, but let's just say it's shaming a body part.
Right.
And yeah,
But again, between the lines on that one, no one should be shaming you for how you look,
that's exactly
right?
right. And that goes both ways
So
again. Again, that
yep.
goes both ways. So Therefore, it might this the items here listed in the article might be geared towards women, but the hence the advice is still the same, which is good,
Absolutely.
which is pretty
And
cool.
this whole
Hmm.
thing was 50 bare minimum dating standards before that you should have like set before you hit 30 or when you're 30.
Hmm.
I disagree with that premise. I think that this should be set from the beginning. Everyone, regardless of their age, should have standards, and they should, I mean, at 15 years old, you probably haven't gone through all these experiences and thoughts, so you don't really have as much of a set yet. That part of it is going to be the learning process. But just because you're 24 doesn't mean you can't have a very well defined list and then,
Exactly.
take care of it, protect yourself.
Exactly. Like number 39, for example, is date someone who doesn't kick you out of their house for refusing to have sex with them. That should be like one of the first things that you
Yep.
should learn as somebody going out into the dating world. If somebody refuses to be with you because you do not want because they don't want to have I mean reword this correctly. If someone is dating you and they kick you out because you refuse to sleep with them, they're not worth your time. But you should learn that that should be like really really early, possibly first ever person you date, because your body is your own and nobody can force you to do anything. That is super important. For that to be that low on the list, honestly, is somewhat like okay, but I mean
Oh,
there
but
are
it's not listed by importance.
I
It's
yeah
almost like, train of thought there.
I
But
guess yeah, so you're right, so
anyways, so if we if we kind of jump ahead here and look at how we might differentiate between superficial and then deeper standards, I think it's important to differentiate only because superficial standards like having a minimum height or maximum weight or particular features they need to have, I don't know, uh, this color eyes, like people, there are some really strange things that people decide that they need for them to be happy. Attractiveness could be included in the superficial thing depending on how far you go with it. You should be attracted to your person you're dating or your significant other, but it doesn't have to be so much that you are discounting people that would really, really make you happy just because they are not extremely attractive to you. And then even money to an extent. Like, you don't necessarily need someone who's a billionaire or a millionaire or a
hmm
it really comes up to you. But like at some point, they need to make enough money that you're not worried about that causing a negative influence on your relationship. So you set that standard. But those superficial things are not the things that are going to get you to the end of your days happy and comfortable with someone. The deeper ones: how intelligent is this person? What are their politics? What are their ethics and morals? Are they a kind person? Do they have education that has brought them enough, the same kind of knowledge as you, or knowledge that kind of goes together, or does it conflict with what you believe and what you understand about the world and the truth of the world? Those things are much more significant and should be given more weight. And this is not necessarily uh, like there's no science behind this. I'm going to say this because I think it and feel it. So take it for what it is. I feel like people tend to move from the superficial to the deeper as they age and as they have experience because they realize that the superficial things actually don't get them what they really want in dating and love. What do you think?
no, you're right, but there are people who live by the standard of superficialness. I mean, depending on where you live, you will see levels of both of those, the deeper standards and the superficial standards. I mean, a lot of people complain that in urban areas, especially with large environments like cities and things like that, where things are very important to people, as well as living standards and all sorts of other things. Superficial standards have a tendency to last longer in a relationship, to last throughout the relationship. Where you live, what car you drive, who you hang out with, things like that. That can be very very high and can permeate through the lifelong standard of the relationship. But you're right. If you want a deep connection with someone, and to live with that person for an extended period of time, you absolutely need to have a connection or standards with regards to all of the things that you mentioned before. But I think it's one of those things is you don't necessarily have to have crazy discriminating standards to the point where you're locking people out. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. But you got to have at least a floor. I think when it comes to
Yeah.
intelligence and ethics and morals and kindness, I mean, like you might have high standards with regards to it, but you must have a floor, I think, with regards to those specific things, or you're just not going to be able to just live with that person, and it is going to be super important that you do, because a lot of the times long-lasting relationships are based on similar beliefs and how you feel about things. In the end, that person will be there supposedly for the rest of your life. So you want them to match up uh, mentally with you, or in the long run, you're going to have problems.
Right. And
Hmm.
if you don't quite understand what Zolfan's saying right there, uh, imagine you're rich, attractive, uh, maid who drives a beautiful car because they make tons of money, who also thinks it's okay to kick your cat or dog. Right. There you go.
Yeah, exactly
That is
right.
why some of the deeper things are more important.
You say that because there was a Twitch person that was literally that's being investigated by by their, I think it was the county of Michigan or wherever it is. She threw her cat on stream. Literally, the cat came on stream, and she literally threw the cat over her shoulder. There are people who found that abhorrent because they love animals. This particular person did not like has a cat. I don't know why she's a cat owner, but she is. Threw her cat over her shoulder in a very sort of non-friendly way, and it offended tons of people. And if you have that sensibility where you love animals and you would never want to do that to that person to an animal that you would own, you would find that abhorrent, and you would not want to be with that particular person. So so an example of one like that. So perfect example, Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, um, so for people who are actually trying to get a sense of what their standards might be or could be or should be, I think the first thing you have to do is just be honest with yourself about what's actually important to you and weigh these things, right? I mean, think about back to like elementary school, middle school. People used to make these kind of lists about
Mhm.
what was important. There was a game, I don't remember what the name of the game was basically like different houses and different
Oh, it's
cars
like
you drive and
the flower game,
the
right? Like, is that the one?
little,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that little paper thing, yeah.
Hmm.
So that was like the little kid, I don't understand anything version of this, but if you sit down with a piece of paper in front of you and you make a list of the things that are very important to you, and not just a sequential list, but also maybe even coming up with like a number system to indicate which ones are more powerful than the other. So if the person's kindness is the most important thing to you, you mark that with a high number, and if their wealth or whatever was much lower, but still something you want to consider, then you could put like a two next to it, or however, this is you. So being honest with yourself, putting down the things that are important to you, and those things should come quickly and easily to you because uh, if they're important, they should be right, on the tip of your tongue. And then also consider that some of these things can change over time and what that might mean for you. So if you are, 21 years old, you might be more interested in finding someone with an amazing body to make friction with, and that might not be as strong or as high up on the list later on when you're kind of done with the dating thing and you want to find someone that's going to be good to be with for the long term and deep into your life. Whereas, while that's still great and still would be nice to have, doesn't have to go off the list, but it might fall lower than some of the other things that would indicate stability and family, all this other stuff. So, yeah, these standards should change with time and experience. And what is important to you at 18 years old should very likely be different than what you are considering at 30 or 50. over time. So, Z, can you think of any of your personal standards that have changed significantly over the years? And like, was that a particular experience that changed it, or just maturing?
Well, let's see. Um, I have interesting standards, but that's basically because of historical references, and we talked about this when we were talking about long distance relationships, for example. Uh, I have a weird standard that I will not want to date someone that is not within a specific driving distance, for example. It is a very superficial standard, for example, but that was a superficial standard that developed as I got older, and I started to really hate driving long distances. But, that is like sort of top level stuff. It's sort of ridiculous. Um, Emotionally, I was very wholeheartedly accepting of, quote, drama, of sort of a little bit of immaturity when it came to how certain girls would take comments and criticism, things like that, when you were trying to be honest, but you didn't mean to offend them in any way. But I don't put up with that now. When I'm trying to explain something, uh, I want to make sure and understand that there is no malice or anything like that with regards to when I'm talking to somebody I'm dating. But it used to be I would mention something, and a girl would get upset and try to make a big hoop something about something that was imprudently mentioned. I just don't put up with that anymore. I expect and want maturity out of a woman that I'm dating, and I wholeheartedly expect that they would want the same thing out of me. Uh, I'm silly and ridiculous sometimes, but when it comes to the relationships, I would hope that that would also apply uh, both ways when I am dealing with a person. The thing about it is that the more people you date, the more people you understand are different when it comes to how they treat relationships. So therefore, you're picking and choosing what you like about these people, but at the same time, you have to be a little bit accepting that everybody is going to be different. So I get that. But if people are unwilling to change, which is another thing that uh, I, I am very, very adamant about, like, you need to be able to sort of understand what somebody's opinion is, and be willing to change your opinion if your opinion has been proven wrong, or if in some way your opinion is just not good for topics and things like that. That means things like politics and things like that can and should be able to be changed if somebody can like sort of give you a compelling argument. Now that's very difficult in this sort of world, in this day and age, where people are either hard left, hard right, even to the point there are people who are hard middle, which I don't understand those people at all. But yeah, I mean, like, there are all sorts of different things when it comes to, like, things like looks and all that other stuff. You know what? Everybody gets older. Attractiveness, what you think is attractive about a person, will also change. Especially if you've been in a lot of relationships, you start to realize that uh, the most attractive women aren't necessarily the most nice women, and sometimes the most unattractive women are not necessarily the nice women either. So
There are no nice women.
no, it's not that. It's just that you can't assume anything when you're going into dates and stuff like that. So you feel like, oh, it's like, oh, I this person's profile is really nice, and she's not necessarily a glamour model, but she's not a plain Jane either, and then you just don't hit it off, or you find her personality abhorrent for some reason or another. It's like you can't generalize people just by how they look, and that's something I think you have a tendency to sort of learn as you get older, um, because everybody grows up with these certain stereotypes of how people think that they act if they look a certain way, attractiveness wise, how they carry themselves, what they wear, things like that. But as you get older, you start to learn that people like being stylish, or people like not not being stylish. People want to wear what they want to wear, things like that. So, yeah, based on, I mean, I'm sort of lollygagging here on the topic, but as you sort of get older, you start to see your personal changes affect how you believe and what your standards are for people. It's actually interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I think that my standards for like exposure and worldliness have increased since I traveled and I lived abroad for over a decade, um, in different countries. And so while it wouldn't have mattered much in my younger years, as I became more of like a world person, it became more important to me that I was paired with one, just because of similar experiences and similar understandings of how different it can be in this place and that place, rather and not just on a topical level, but like really having been there and kind of invested in the place. So that was, that was kind of a important factor when I chose my wife as well. Um, any which way,
Yeah.
uh, one thing that people also need to consider is whether or not they should raise or lower their dating standards. Right? If you find yourself disappointed again and again with a particular feature of your dates or your partners, then you might consider that you need to raise your standards. And if your standards are making it nearly impossible for you to find someone, or that people that you're with are repeatedly express that your expectations are unreasonable, then you might have to lower your standards.
I have a
But
great cartoon for that right now, which
oh yeah,
yeah. So I'm putting that up on screen. This was from Online Dating Magazine. The link is right there on the page. So cartoon is two. It's a man and a woman at a bar, and she opens up her conversation with this man. I have high standards for the men I date, but I can always lower them. Interested? So the
ouch.
guy, yeah, the guy has this sort of like look on her face, but it goes to what you're saying. I think what it is that dating standards, you can price yourself out of the market is basically what the term is, and it's one of those things that you have to be careful with your standards because you can a perfectly reasonable guy or girl can be knocked out of the market if your standards are too rigidly high. And being flexible is always very, very important. But remember, as I said before, I always think that there is a floor that people cannot go below. But that's just me.
Right. Well, I
Hmm.
mean, if there isn't,
Hmm.
if your standards don't exist at all, then you can likely connect with somebody. And in some cases, that may work. But if you're looking for something a little more, I don't know, something more significant and meaningful, then having those standards and sticking to them is going to be your best bet.
Hmm.
Um, this, this, uh, this is kind of a sad comic to me. I
It
mean,
is. Yeah.
from the lady's side, she has standards and she's not getting them met, and so she's having to lower them to get to get with people. And she's looking at this guy and being like, "You are probably not good enough for me," which has got to be insulting him, saying, "Hey, I'll lower them so that you could have a chance." It's just sad.
It's sad all around, but the thing about it is that as both men and women get older, and that fear of being alone starts to settle into some people, and that fear settles in some people at different ages. So some people start really worrying about their dating life, about not finding Miss or Mister Right by 30, for example, and they start freaking out and they have a tendency to go out and maybe date not so scrupulous people and lower their high standards in order to maybe find Mr. Right accidentally, but usually that doesn't happen. Sometimes it happens to people later, closer to 40, the stereotypical sort of midlife age. You look at yourself and you're alone and nobody's around and you get desperate. That is a fear that everybody lives with. You being married is a little different. Me being single, It's never really like I've been told, men have it easier because men can be single for a hell of a lot longer before they find somebody that they can settle down with. But women, for example, they have a maternal clock that unfortunately, that if they really want to have kids of their own or, conceive and things like that, that there's only a certain point when they can do so before it can't happen anymore. So I think a little bit of it is fear when it comes to standards, uh, because if you let that fear dictate your standards, you're in for a bad time because a lot of the times it doesn't necessarily benefit you in the way that you're hoping it will.
Right? Biological constraints can lead people to make hasty decisions or to settle, but in the same way, your psychological constraints can also do that to you. The sense that you're losing value because of your age, or the sense that your life experiences somehow make you less valuable. Maybe you are divorced and you think, "Oh no, I'm damaged goods now. So my what is my value out there to someone who has not been married and divorced?" These are just two examples, but there are 100 that people will get a sense of whether they're worth more or less, and then that affects how they set their standards. But the one standard that everyone should be maintaining, regardless of anything that's ever happened to you or what your biology tells you, is that you deserve to be happy, and that the decision you make to pair up with someone and not pair up, whatever you decide to do, should be based around the standards you set for your life that will lead to you being happy. And that there are some people out there, and it's very sad to say, that don't expect to be happy, but they don't want to be alone, and so they are opting to be with someone who is outside of their standards and lower than their standards because they just don't want to be alone, and that's a really hard place to be in. So hopefully people will give themselves a chance to do better, but it's your own power that's going to get you to make those decisions. So you got to make those hard choices.
Correct.
Um, there was one other thing I wanted to say before we moved on to our next topic, and this one's actually a little harder to gauge, but like, if you've improved yourself and offer more to a potential partner, it makes sense that you might also demand more out of your prospective partner, right? So like, I have improved certain elements of my life. I've improved my health. Let's say I lost weight, got a better job, got my degree, whatever, dot 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 dot. I've elevated myself in a way. My standards should not necessarily be the same as they were before, because I now think that I bring more to the table. Now, the people out there that are possibly pairing with me may not believe that those things are valuable. Therefore, I might not be more valuable to them. But if my standards come up because now I have a higher expectation of my partner because of what I've done, that is perfectly reasonable. However, you might run into trouble if you're already in a relationship with someone and expecting the other person to up their game because you did. Right? If you're out and about and you're trying to date people, you can play with your standard, and you can see what you can get. But if you're already locked in with somebody, by locked in I'm saying just like being in a significant long-term relationship and or married, uh, by raising your value, since you're already with them, it's not the same asking them to up their game. And I have seen a number of people on Reddit complaining about this dynamic.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any concepts or any ideas, or should I keep going?
No, you should keep going. This is good.
Cool. All right. So the next thing we want to kind of touch on is the whole out of your league concept, which is directly associated with uh, setting standards in the dating world. I personally don't subscribe to this because I think it assumes too much of the unknown, right? Like, out there, you're going to see people that are mixed matches, and you're going to say, "Oh, how did that possibly happen? Why is she with him? Why is he with her?" but there is something that has made these people connect. And whatever it is, it's something that those people valued enough to make the connection. And it may not be the best relationship ever, or it may be the best relationship ever. But the point is, these things happen. So for me, to say someone's out of your league just doesn't necessarily compute, right? There is the power of personality that can go a very long way with people. We showed Christina Hendricks' husband. I'm sure he has a great personality, even though he's kind of a goofy looking dude and less, has achieved less in his career than her. But that's just one example. And not everyone values the same things the same way. So if you if you think that you're walking down the street, and I see this a lot on those incel forums and stuff, and you're pointing at someone saying, "Oh my God, how is he with such a beautiful woman? He doesn't respect her." And this is like the nice guy forums, right? He doesn't respect her. Oh, I would treat her so much better, and all this other stuff. You have no idea what these people do for each other, what they offer each other, and what you value, which is clearly completely superficial for this woman. You know nothing about her. Um, may not be what she values about herself or what he values about her. So, for all you nice guys out there, slap yourself in the face for me, because you have no business talking about other people's relationships. You should work on yourself. So, all of that being said, I think a lot of people do subscribe, which means that even if you don't subscribe to this out of your league idea, you may still have to come in contact with people like this, and you have to deal with this idea, which means maybe someone out there, and if you run into someone who ever tells you that you are out of their league, just walk away and be happy that you didn't mess with that, because that's pretty arrogant.
It's
Uh,
beyond arrogant. It is actually rude, in my opinion, when it comes to things like that. This whole concept of the out of your league thing, it's the only way that I'm able to be able to describe it is that it takes, I want to say superior confidence, but it's almost arrogance, to believe that instead of looking for a standard, they are inholdenly entitled to a particular standard. It's almost like a different mentality, almost. And this is my opinion with regards to this. Um, there is a level of selfishness that comes in that is just mind-boggling to me. That people believe that they deserve a particular looking type of guy or girl, or that they believe that they have to have particular living standards. Nobody's entitled to any of these things. You have to go out there and earn it, and even in relationships, you have to go out there and earn somebody's love by whatever it is that you go about and doing it. And when I mean earning it, I mean dating and understanding and maybe connecting on an emotional level. It just doesn't come because you're good looking. And and this goes for both men and women. That is abhorrently selfish, and you want to stay away from people like that as best as you can. Um, Tim brought up the example of Christina Hendricks' husband. You know what? Bravo to him. Good job. For people that look upon that, it's literally jealousy. It's like, how the hell did he end up with a woman like that? It's like, well, maybe he was just nice and asked her out. Things like that happen, and it's not unbeholden and to for people to just go up to somebody and just say, hi, how you doing? I'm Hodo, nice to meet you. I think you're very attractive, you have similar interests than I do, would you like to go out? And if they say yes, then you're one step farther than the dude in the corner who's just ogling and believing that there's no way a guy like him could go out with a girl like you, or the other way around. So
True enough, man.
mhm, mhm.
Also, there's a counter to that. Someone thinking that they're out of your league. If you put people on a pedestal and you basically tell them that they are out of your league and you're so amazing and undeserving of them like that, you they may believe you one day,
Yeah.
and they may like get rid of you, or find someone that is closer to their level that you put them on. I mean, it's fine to give people compliments, but just like they chose you. They're with you. So there's no reason for you to try to convince them that you're unworthy. So
Well,
it's good.
it's the idolizing concept, right? Like when you idolize somebody, you're not actually with them. You're literally um, basically a fan of them instead of being in a relationship with them. So if you treat your boyfriend or girlfriend like an idol, where you're not connecting with them, but you're just basically praising them all the time and taking photos of them and being very superficial with regards to it, that can affect the mentality of both of the people involved in the relationship. So yeah, I mean, the whole idea of dating is to understand and 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 connect on an emotional level, possibly physical level, definitely, um, so that you find a partner that you can be happy to live with. They're not like a model robot that you're building or a doll or whatever it is. It's like,
Not
no,
yet.
not yet. Could be. Some seem,
Wait a
they,
couple years.
yeah, they just need that emotion chip that they put in Data from Star Trek: The Next Generation, right? So it's like, uh, but they're not that. You're dating another person, so hopefully, um, you would never want to do that either way. Like if a woman idolizes a man or a man idolizes a woman, there's no good thing that can come out of it. It ends up being a one-sided relationship, and it's harmful for both people involved, honestly. So,
True enough.
hmm
So going forward, um, we've talked about this whole out of your league concept, and we've talked about how we know whether we need to raise or lower our dating standards. But what we haven't yet hit on, and which I think a lot of people might at some point in their life ask, is how do I know if I'm settling? Right? Uh, how do I know if I have attached myself to a person who is probably lower than what my standards should be? And there are a couple things you can ask. There are a couple questions you can ask that may give you that answer. One of them is, do the people that who know you very well, like perhaps your family members, your best friends, those people that have seen you grow, know you over time, and know what's important to you. Do those people know you and your relationship? Are they telling you and indicating that perhaps you are not with a person who is deserving of you? And I don't mean this in like in a way that like maybe you're in college and your friends don't want you to be dating someone seriously because they want you to be able to go out and party with them or something. Not that. I mean, do your parents steer you away from talking about marrying this person? Does your best friend who knows you've been with this person still try to not hook you up, but like point you in the direction of other people that you might consider dating? Like there are signals out there, and a lot of people send them subtly or do not send them at all because they're trying to respect the decisions that you've made. But sometimes when it's bad enough, people will tell you straight up, and they'll tell you in a way that is hard to ignore. So, if you're getting that, even though you're totally in love with this person or you got some ideas about how great they are, maybe have a conversation with that person or that family member, and get them to go into a little more detail why they think that you're settling by being with that person. Another one might be uh, if you yourself are just unhappy with the types of people that you date. Now, notice this is different than I'm saying this is different than the people you attract. The people who you attract are not necessarily indicative of who you are because, hound dogs are hound dogs. But if you are unhappy with the type of people you actually date, that means that you've made the choice to date them, and now that's on you, right? So you may be settling because you are actively getting into relationships with people that are basically just not good enough for you and making you unhappy because of that. So be aware of that. Take inventory. Next question: are you now in a long-term relationship with someone that you know for sure that you will never marry, or that you don't necessarily see yourself staying with for a longer period of time if it's a relation if it's a non-married relationship. Um, because that will indicate something to you. If you can see the end of the road and you know you want to get off and you're still with them, it's possible you're just settling and just enjoying the comfort of being with someone. Any ideas, Z?
That last one is always a interesting one because that is one of those things that really applies to older people. There are younger people who subscribe to that theory. The oh, my boyfriend is really fun, but I would never marry him, or my girlfriend is really fun, but there's no way we would end up together in the long run. Mm, When you're younger, that's a little bit more acceptable. When you're 30, it is not acceptable, and when you're 40, it is abhorrent to do that to a person. So you shouldn't, because by that age, you should be looking to only date people who you want to spend your life with. Um, just as one of those things, the points that you sort of go through, um, it's like settling isn't one of those things that when somebody says, "Oh, it's like you could be settling." A lot of it is, what are you actually settling on? A lot of the times, when Acorn was making the examples of, are they still trying to hook you up with other people, or your friends pull you aside, they see something that isn't something that you are normally accepting of. So when your friends actually come to you, or other people like your family members or something like that, when they come to you and they say, "Are you sure this is something that you want? Like, is this relationship something that you really indeed want?" They might be giving you a little bit of insight with regards to something that you, one, have not realized, or two, you do realize, but you are going to be okay with it temporarily. Um, a lot of the times, it's actually really interesting to see what outside people out of your relationship will actually ask, because it is an interesting conversation that you can have with your friends that can help you decide whether or not the person that you're dating is the right person for you, or if you are indeed settling. Because one, your friends can be very helpful in making sure that your ego and your self-esteem is still at the level where it should be. Two, they can see things that possibly love goggles have made you blind to. And three, they'll be honest with you with regards to the type of person that they think you should be with. Might not be the opinion that you share at the time, but it is a little bit of insight that possibly you might not have considered. So
Right.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I think that's when it comes to settling. I think my big part of advice is, um, if you are a little bit hesitant about the relationship that you're in with a person, uh, talk to somebody that you indeed trust, and have them sort of meet the person, hang out with them a little bit, and then ask their opinion, because it might be helpful with regards to the insight that you get. But be prepared for honesty that sometimes you might not be ready for, but that
Right,
you need
and
that.
pick someone that you respect and that you think would want the best for you. Someone that also probably has a really good self-awareness,
Yes,
that they are, you know, if you are just talking to your pal who's like, "Nah, dude, she's not hot enough. You could do better." That's not it, right?
it's not.
That's just not really useful at all.
Hmm.
But if it's someone who's invested in your happiness, they want the best for you, then you're more likely to get it. And that, maybe that's just that's a pure moment of honesty. And
Hmm.
and a lot of times that's a lot to ask for. There
Yeah,
are people that are really interested in telling you what you want to hear, because then you'll like them more.
yeah,
Whereas a friend who will tell you what you don't want to hear because they care about you, that is much more valuable. And so asking for someone to be brutally honest about something, in this case, whether you if you're settling or not, it may be uncomfortable, but
Hmm.
it is well worth asking. And also being honest with yourself, having that pure honesty with yourself and saying, if there were no consequences to the answer, what would my answer be, right? I
Hmm.
I know, and this is speaking from personal experience. The third one that I mentioned there, if you're in a long-term relationship with someone that you know for sure you won't marry or stay with, are you settling? Like I know I've had that conversation with myself, and the answer that I spoke when being honest and true was a hard one to let come out of my mouth. And when it did, it was not long after that I was a single man again
Hmm.
because of it.
Yeah.
So,
So like it might not be friends, but this is a perfect opportunity if you have a good relationship with a older younger sister or an older younger brother. They have nothing vested in hurting you because they're family. It's just like they'll do it and they'll do it anyway. But if you feel like that their opinion is very helpful, then they might be one of the first people you go to. So
all right.
yeah.
So, and then, this is sort of a jump from the same topic. Uh, how do I know if I'm settling? Is settling such a bad thing? Right. So, it's not actually a bad thing if you're comfortable and happy being comfortable. If that is more important to you than putting yourself back out there in the scary dating world and uh, possibly risking not being connected to someone, not having someone to keep you warm, whatever it is, uh, then you know you can settle.
Hmm.
No one's There's no fine. Like you're not going to be kicked out. It's just your choice. And if you've decided that you are not sure whether you can do better, then you can accept your situation. It's not optimal. We're on here talking about how people can strive for their best relationships and they're getting the most out of what they want in the world. But if you don't want to put what you have at risk, by all means, stay where you are and just be content with that.
Yeah.
So, Z,
Hmm.
we spent a lot of time talking about other people, but I think now, because we're getting close to the end here, it's important to turn the camera around.
Okay.
So this is kind of a weird question, but would you want to date the female version of yourself?
No,
Why or why not?
I can say that right now. No, because I know what I am. I am very picky. Uh, but I am also, it's very interesting when you think about that. I am impulsive in sometimes not a good way. Uh, I am very selfish with my time. And these are just awful things about myself, but I'm very honest about all of this stuff.
I'm not
Uh,
asking you to beat yourself up here
no,
on on Twitch,
I know, I
but
know.
rather just to consider these things. Like,
But, a female version of me would be fun to hang out with, that's for damn sure. But would it be somebody that I would want to be in a relationship with? Honestly, probably not. So, because sometimes I've found that someone who is a little bit opposite of what I am is very helpful in a relationship. Someone who can motivate me to get up and do stuff. Um, Someone who is actually a morning person that will force me to do things and get the day started and be a little bit more active. Someone who is a little bit more active in activities and things like that. So sort of just somebody who's willing to get me off my ass is essentially I find very very nice because I am in the end very sedentary, very locked in my ways, really do stuff. But you know me, if I'm available and you want to go out and do stuff, I'm usually available to go ahead and do it. But will I motivate myself to get out of the house? Probably not. So like if I
yes,
were to date a homebody, for example, I would never leave this house ever. So I would not want that. I would want somebody who would be able to get me out of the house and do stuff. Not to say that there are times in which I would rather not do anything at all. There is a perfectly good time for doing stuff like that. But that is my honest answer. with regards to it. You're
Yeah.
already married, so I can't even turn around that question to you because you've
I mean,
already.
this is a hypothetical. I'm not actually going to go find myself as a female and
Yeah.
have to worry about that. However, if you were to ask me that, I would say that I probably would not try to date myself, the female version of myself, only because I'm way out of my league, and I just don't think that'd be possible. I'm full of crap. This is absolutely not true. No, I don't know that I think I would be interesting to talk to myself. Like, I think I'd be, again, like you said, like a friendly interaction with myself. I don't know that I would, like, there are certain elements of my personality, and I think it would conflict. So, probably not the best partner for me. However, since you don't get to choose
Hmm.
the personality of your partner necessarily, they bring a whole lot of stuff you can't possibly account for. Uh, that's kind of the game. That's part of the excitement. And I appreciate that I'm constantly learning new things about my wife and being challenged by her to be a better me and to be a better me to her, like for her. So yeah, I don't know that I would get that out of myself. Uh, so again, we're getting pretty close to the end here, but I wanted to make a point, and it is about looking in the mirror for people. All of this has been about like setting your standards for the other person. But there's a really important factor which we have not spoken about much, and that is uh, what are we bringing to the table, and how we might close the distance between what we think we deserve and what we actually deserve. Right? A lot of us have a very bloated sense of self, and even if we are not outwardly arrogant, we do think that we deserve the best. Uh, and in fact, we all should probably be looking in the mirror and saying, "What do I bring to the table in a any given relationship, and what kind of standards would I meet for someone else?"
Hmm.
So, how we evaluate what we bring to the table is pretty important. And there's no score system out there, but we have to consider that people don't value the things that we value about ourselves the same way, right? So, if I think I am a great catch because I make a huge salary, there is a person out there who doesn't care at all about how much money I make. And there are other things that are more important to that. And therefore, I'm not a catch for them. I'm below their standard. And I have to consider that. And I have to accept that too, right? I'm not going to sit there and convince her that she should care more about my salary. So while there's no score system, there is something there. And you need to consider this. Uh, we should be able to put ourselves in someone else's shoes and imagine if we are at least close to a match for them. And this can be harder for people who have lower self esteem or who are very arrogant because that influences their self perception and their self valuation and might influence how we perceive others when they see us. So people generally don't count themselves out of any given opportunity. But if you are a catch, you should recognize your value and make sure not to let anyone undeserving take advantage of that. And what I mean by that is like uh, years ago when I was living in China, there was a couple that was actually leaving the school where I was teaching. When I came in, they were going out, and there was a couple of weeks overlapping. And it was a young Scottish couple, and
Hmm.
the girl, the female in the relationship, was sweet, kind, generous, caring, considerate, like just doting. Really took care of the guy that she was with, and he was arrogant, insufferable, rude, oftentimes sloppy drunk. Uh, you know, basically everyone knew he was cheating on her, and she may have known or not, but like it was an extreme mismatch. And I think, and of course, I can't speak for her, but I feel that she probably didn't recognize her value and that she let someone undeserving take advantage of that. Like this is this is different, I think, than me just seeing a very beautiful woman with a very ugly man on the street and just pointing and saying, "Oh, that's not this is not like a nice guy thing." Like there were not one but 10 fundamentally mismatched elements of these two, and she did not look happy. And she would cry to, I mean, this is only a couple of weeks of overlap, and these things were grossly apparent. So, in that case, the mismatch exists because it was allowed to exist. And uh, people who people are more than willing to jump into a relationship where they are under the standard because that's an up for them.
Hmm.
So people need to be somewhat careful themselves that they are not selling themselves short. I guess that's my bottom line there.
That story is ridiculously sad, but I mean, is a point of that maybe they were both interested in teaching English? I mean, the dude's Scottish, so his English is barely understandable, um, but in a way, it's that maybe. Yeah, did you ever get like any background on the story? Because to me, for them to be just miraculously in China, um, there must have been something in common about teaching English and seeing the world that they might have bonded over, and that was
Oh,
the
I
only
think
thing they bonded over. And then all of a sudden, she realized it's like, oh my god, what have I gotten myself
they
into?
didn't meet in China. They came to China from Scotland together. They were already a couple.
They were already a couple.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, and again, I mean, for all that I'm saying now, I was an outside perspective. I was not a close friend to either of them, so there's a lot of information I'm probably missing there. But uh, I mean, again, if you're looking for an outside perspective to see if perhaps you're settling and you want someone who knows your relationship, that's one thing. But like in this case, it was just overly apparent, and I was not the only person who understood this to be true. So, um, it's just sort of a warning, and just to people that evaluate yourself honestly, but don't undercut your value either, because that will set you up for you know what is probably going to be heartbreak and sadness.
Well, and a lot of time wasting. So
That's
it's
true as
like,
well,
yeah.
for sure.
So it's like, you could be doing something a little bit more productive. But on that somber note, I think that's going to be the end for us today. So hopefully, everybody here has learned something about setting standards and understanding what they should be. The whole point of these Sunday conversations is we go in depth into a particular topic, and we try to go a little bit deeper, trying, instead of just the 20-minute segments that we do here on Wednesday, we want to make sure that we talk around an entire subject here and get a complete grasp as to what they are. And hopefully, you have learned something today. So, Tim, thank you so much for joining. And lots of great points there, and hopefully, uh, people have learned something. Any final thoughts from you with regards to this?
uh, yeah, just take care of yourselves and look out for yourselves. And if you decide tonight that you're going to break up with your significant other because you are settling, more power to you. And good luck out there.
Yeah,
And I'm not saying go rush and do this, but if anything that was said in this uh, in our Twitch line conversation tonight, if anything was said here that hit a little bit deep, that hit you on struck a chord and got to you a little bit deeper, then perhaps that's telling you something.
exactly right. So remember, hopefully, if you hear something here that maybe hits you right there, then maybe it's time for a little bit of self evaluation. But as always, if you need some help with that self evaluation, you can email us at twitchlinelove@gmail.com, and we'll talk about it. We can also do private email correspondence for those who don't want to uh, have us talk about it on air, but we will mention it offhandedly, where we will be treated as anonymous as possible. You can also tweet us at TwitchLine on Twitter. Watch all of our previous shows. Maybe there was a Sunday Focus segment like today's that you wanted to learn about. We talked about baggage and all sorts of other topics in previous Sunday Focus segments. You can check that out on YouTube. And if you want to listen to us on the go, you can listen to us on SoundCloud through the app and just look up TwitchLine Relationship Advice. But that's going to do it for us. Our next show is on Wednesday, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join us here on Twitch and YouTube, and we talk about topics we find on Reddit, and hopefully we'll go through some of your emails. But that's going to do it for us. For Mr. Acorn, I am Hodo. Thank you for joining us this Sunday, and we hope you join us again Wednesday at 10 p.m. Thanks so much. Have a good evening.
Good night, everyone.